Welcome to our Pirkei Avot show. Today we're going to be doing chapter 5, Mishna 16, and we'd like to dedicate this episode in memory of Levy and Moshe Esther and Elisha bat Levy, and also in memory of Moshe ben Binyamin. So let's hand you over to Mr. Michael Kalati.
Thanks, Rav Mashiach. So this Mishnah, we're going to deal with 4 attitudes amongst those who give charity. So the Mishnah starts, Arba midot benotnei tzedakah. There are 4 attitudes amongst those who give charity. Lo yitnu acherim. One who wishes that he should give and others should not. Eino ra'a b'shel acherim. And he begrudges others what is theirs. Yitnu acherim v'hu lo yitein. The others should give and he should not. Eino ra'a b'shelo. He is a miser. Yiten v'yitnu acherim. That he should give and others should give too. Chosid. He is pious. Lo yiten v'lo yitnu acherim. Rasha. That neither he nor others should give. He is wicked. So again, we get this very familiar 4 attitudes or 4 characteristics which we've seen in the last few Mishnayot. But here it deals with virtues and vices. Last Mishnah we dealt with abilities, memory and understanding. And this one we give with people's attitudes towards giving charity or not giving charity. So let's very quickly go through it again. The first example, the first person, he wishes he should give, but others should not give. He is someone who begrudges others what is theirs. The second person is he thinks that others should give tzedakah and he should not. He's a miser. The third example, that he should give and others should also give too. He is a pious person. And the fourth and last example, that neither he nor others should give tzedakah. He's a wicked person. Well, it's an interesting point immediately that notes that the Mishnah says the 4 people, these are the 4 attitudes of people that give charity. But we notice that 2 examples of these don't give charity. So this is very odd. But the one explanation is that at heart, every Jew is charitable. And these are just deficiencies, but essentially the heart of the Jew is charitable. As HaKadosh Baruch Hu says of Avraham, and I'm quoting from Bereshis 18:19, I have known him that he may bid his children to do tzedakah. So 2 characteristics of a Jew, says the Talmud, is that he is compassionate and does acts of kindness. This is quoted from Yevamot 79a. Therefore the Mishnah calls all Jewry givers of charity. If 2 types refuse to give, they have barriers or they have personal issues and they suffer from resistances. But at heart, they are givers of charity. Similarly, we'll discuss in the next Mishnah. It'll also speak of 4 types of people who have the same thing. We'll look at that next. But let's analyze the first example. First one is he wants to give, but he wants no one else to give. It seems here that he is a person who chases honor. And as we know in previous Mishnayot, we've been warned against the attitude of chasing honor. He may be of a type of person who would want his name in front, on a plaque in front of it, but doesn't want someone else to have an additional name. For example, if he donates something, the Beis Medrash, and someone else donates the kitchen for the, he wouldn't want another person's name attached. In fact, he'd probably kick up a fuss and say, no, this is my deal. I want my name. I don't want anybody else's name. That's not a generous thing. Because it's all about the poor, not about the poor, but what is needed. If it's an organization like a shul, it's more about the what you're giving to, not what you're taking from it. And this is very important to understand. He may even be getting tax relief from the tzedakah and just thinking, you know what, I can get my name splattered all over the community and I'm saving tax. This is the attitude of this first person. Let's look and see an example of one who gives but doesn't want others to give. There's a Rav Avahu said, one who gives a dinar to a poor man who has 199 dinarim, so that he has the full 200 zuz, which is the threshold before, I believe it's 200 dinarim, means that you can't collect the fallen sheaves or the payah, the shikah, the leket, and payah. Yeah, so if he has the full 200, he's not allowed to. But if he has 199, he's allowed to take as much as he wants from the field. Now, if someone knows this and gives him the extra 1 dinar, so he's unable to claim his rightful tzedakah, this is called a wicked person. This is someone who doesn't want other people to have charity, even though he will give, but he doesn't want other people. So, as we say, if he has 200 less 1 dinar, he may even take 1,000 worths of dinar from the fields. And also, it's very interesting to note that the word tzedakah, charity, is exactly 199, the gematria.
Oh, wow.
And it has a corroboration with that sort of threshold up to what is considered the poor person. So the one who gives the poor man 1 dinar exactly doesn't do him any favors. Suddenly he loses his status of poverty and loses his right to a great deal of expected income. So we must treat the poor people with compassion and respect, and this is very, very important. So let's look at the next example. There is that others should give and he should not. This miserly man in our Mishna needs to learn that giving charity does not make you simply poorer, but Hashem will surely look after you. As King Solomon says, there is the one who thinks he becomes rich, yet has nothing. Another thinks he impoverishes himself, yet he has abundant wealth. So a person who gives tzedakah thinking that they are going to become poor because of that, they're missing the point completely. Hashem sees everything, as we learnt in the previous Mishnah. He's an eye that sees and an ear that hears, and everything is written down in a book. And so this must be remembered when you're giving tzedakah. Don't figure out what you may be losing temporarily, because Hashem will reimburse you 1,000-fold. If he's constantly trying to check his books and see how much he's down by giving tzedakah, this is not what it's about, because this is very important. There was a nice story that I read about one of the heads of the House of Rothschild, this huge banking family.
Yeah.
And he was once asked how much his great fortune totaled. And he reached into his drawer, took out a book that had it all his, it was like a bookkeeping entry file, and he looked at all his charitable contributions, and he added the figures, and then he gave the total number of his tzedakah as his total wealth. Believing he had taken the wrong book by mistake, his secretary handed him the general ledger, which was perhaps his investments and portfolios, and this, I don't know exactly which member of the Rothschild family, but he answered, "Never fear, I know that I own all kinds of mines and properties, business ventures and securities, but the mines may be flooded and the properties confiscated. War can disrupt my business enterprises and render all my securities worthless. Only the figures in this charity book record what is really mine. This I am worth, this nobody can take from me." So wonderful.
I'll tell you also a postscript to that story. I believe it was Rothschild. It actually could have been Montefiore, but I believe it was Rothschild. At the end, when he was about to pass away, he wrote his will, And after his will, he commanded it to be read out publicly. So it said in the will, I would like to be buried in my socks, wearing my socks. So his family were like, this is unusual, so this is their father. So they went to the Chevra Kadisha and they said, look, our father wrote in his will, I want to be buried in my socks. So the Chevra Kadisha said, it's impossible, we can't do that, it's against the halacha. So they said, no, it says in there, and they fought. And of course he was a very, very rich and influential man in his lifetime, but the Chevra Kadisha would not let up. They said, no, it's impossible. So then they read in the will something else, or maybe this was a request by him before he died, and then they read this in the will. So it said they opened up the will, and it said in there, you see, a man can be as rich as anybody on the planet, but you can't take it with you. See, I couldn't even be buried in my socks. Yeah. That was just to show.
Yeah.
That when it comes to material things, you can't take it with you. However, Ashrei mi shabal lakan v'talmudo be'ado. Fortunate is he who comes here or there, which means at Shemayim, and his learning is in his hand, because that is what you can take with you. No material thing, doesn't matter. You can't even take your socks with you, but when it comes to Torah and mitzvot, that you can definitely take with you.
Yeah. That's lovely. I'd like to give another story regarding a Beis Din and two cases that came before the Beis Din. In the first case, a woman brought her husband to complain that he was giving away far too much tzedakah. The second case, was brought by the local charity officials. Against his will, they too brought a man to the Beis Din, but with the opposite complaint. He would give no charity. In each case, the three rabbis who made up the Beis Din called forward the man in question and asked for an explanation. So the first husband, who gave tzedakah lavishly, spoke first. He said life was short, and before he turned around, he might be gone, die. As long as he drew breath and had some money to his name, he wanted to give, to acquire as many mitzvot as he could. Tomorrow might be too late to do any more. The second man had just a similar kind of positive reason for his behavior. He's reasoned, how could he give away hard-earned money to charity? What of his old age, when unable to work any longer, he would need every penny for sheer existence? So the first was afraid he might die tomorrow. The second feared old age. Yet to each of these three rabbis of the Beis Din, they gave the same answer. They answered, what you fear will never be. And this can be also, King Solomon said, charity will save from death. We learn this in Proverbs 10:2. So the first man was likely to live long, and perhaps the second one not. So let's look at the third example of the chassid, the pious, the saintly one who wishes that he would give and others would give too. This is important. He gives and he encourages others to do too. And that's a very important thing. To show an example is extremely important. In fact, when I was learning this, I had to rethink my values, because I thought that sometimes when you gave anonymously, that was a very high level of tzedakah. It means you're not trying to show off. But from what I've learned, and it is true, it dawned upon me that it's more important to give with your name, to show an example, to be an example to other people, that's what I learned when I was studying for this. That you should show that you're giving. This one, he gives, and he wants others to give too. He encourages others to give too. He'll start this charity drive. he'll say, come on, I'm putting in 1,000. What are you going to give me? Let's get involved in this worthy cause. And he will encourage others. People say, you know what, he's committed himself, I'll do the same. Whereas before, perhaps the second person wouldn't have thought of giving tzedakah. So to publicly empower other people to give tzedakah by giving tzedakah is a high form of giving tzedakah.
But what's to say you can't do both? You can give publicly, but at the same time, you can also do charitable acts quietly. So you can inspire, and yet you can be Mekayim the mitzvah of Matana B'Seiter.
Well, that's funny you say that. I will quote King Solomon to you, Proverbs. Okay. He says, in the morning sow your seed, and at evening do not rest your hand. And some Chazal think, they talk about this, they're saying that he gives charity in one way, and he also gives at night, under dark, it's, anonymously. So yes, it's scriptural proof what you're saying. Okay, so let's continue with this idea of let's have an analogy of this one who gives and the saintly one, and also Hashem's view of the saintly one. So imagine a king who got angry at his son and decreed that from then on he wouldn't be allowed to attend the royal meal table. But later the king knew well that his son was hungry and thirsty, and he felt very compassionate towards his son. So he said, look, fortunate will be the man who takes my son into his house and gives him food and drink. Whatever I possess can be his in reward. As it is stated, I think this is from Proverbs, he who is gracious to the poor lends to Hashem, and his good deed Hashem will repay him. That's Proverbs 19:17. So that's a good analogy to how the state of, we are God's children, and if we look after God's children, Hashem will look after us. So whatever fate and destiny makes Hashem sentence a poor man to poverty, we must remember he too is a member of the human family. HaKadosh Baruch Hu wants the poor also to live, and his wish is that we help him. This is where the chassid, the pious one, perceives and obeys, through compassion. And let's look at Rambam's view and attitude on tzedakah in his great code of law, the Yad HaChazakah. So there are 8 levels, he writes, on which you can deal with the needy. At the lowest level, you give him your charity with a glum, mournful face. At one level above, you give cheerfully, but less than a correct amount. At the third level, you give cheerfully, but only after he asks. The 4th level is reached when you put the money into his hands before he has to ask. If you want to attain the 5th level, you leave the money where he can get it without seeing you, to spare him shame. At the 6th level, not only would he not see you, he would not even know that the charity came from you. The 7th level is reached when all charity is collected by absolutely responsible and trustworthy officials who then distribute it with utter discretion, reducing the shame or embarrassment of the poor to a very minimum. And what is the 8th, the very highest level? When someone's fortune goes into sharp decline and he faces poverty, you should rally to his support. You should give him money outright, if it can be done without shaming him. You have to lend him what he needs, or perhaps best form a business partnership with him, or give him employment to strengthen his hands so that he will not have to open it and beg for money. As it says in, I think it's Vayikra, if your brother becomes poor and cannot maintain himself with you, you shall uphold him, that your brother may live along with you. In other words, Rambam concludes, strengthen, maintain him so that he does not fall and become indignant. Let's look at the very last example. He's the wicked one, the one who wishes that neither he nor others should give, and he's the worst of the lot. He is the lowest rung of the ladder. He doesn't want to even be bothered by by these. When he sees these, I don't know if you remember, like in high holidays, you get these collection papers that have these things you put the ribbon through to show how much you want to give. He doesn't even bother to touch it. He leaves it. It sits under his tuchus, so to speak, and he doesn't bother with that. He doesn't want to know. He thinks that all of the people collecting are corrupt. All the organisations are ripping him off, are taking too much of the money in administration, and he's a tight-fisted. Not tight-fisted. Tight-fisted's heart is the best description. He doesn't feel good even when he sees other people giving tzedakah. He doesn't want to be a good example. He'll tell people, why are you giving to these people? He'll find every reason not to give and to persuade others not to give too. So those are the 4 types of attitudes to giving charity, and that concludes the Mishna 16 of Perek 5.
Fantastic. That's a very, very practical Mishnah, which definitely I feel all can take something away from that, because everyone has to give tzedakah. So thank you very much for that, Michael. And next time we will do Mishnah 17, which is 4 types of people who go to the Beit Midrash. Until then, it's upon us to wish you a wonderful and blessed week.